Welcome to the Meeple Syrup Show, designers discussing board game design. And this is episode 3, and we're here discussing print and play games. I'm going to introduce our guests real quick and then go back to our hosts. So first off, Jeremiah Lee, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Lee.
Excellent, excellent. And what game are you known for in the print and play community?
For Zombie in My Pocket.
Excellent, excellent. And how about Emmanuel? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oui, bonjour. Well, my first print and play game is Airborne in My Pocket. So Jeremiah stole my title, and I did D-Day Dice too.
Excellent, excellent.
And D-Day Dice 1.
Nice. Well, we'll definitely come back to that. But before we ask some questions from our print and play experts, I'm actually going to throw it to Sen and ask, what games have you been playing this week?
Oh, hey. Well, as always, I'm playing a lot of this. This is Star Realms. I play it kind of incessantly on my iPhone with people from around the Twitterverse. The other game that I am super hyped about is Tragedy Looper. I don't own it. Jesse bought it just to play it with us, and I got to tell you, it's given me, anyways, one of the best responses emotionally that I've had to a game in a long time. So tense, every card turn is making me sweat, and I'm on the edge of my seat holding on, saying, "Oh no, don't kill the poor schoolgirl," and I hope you're not the murderer. And it was awesome. I just there's 10 scenarios. I don't think I could play more than one a night. I would probably go into cardiac arrest. It's that stressful for me. I don't know why, but every decision mattered. And I loved it.
Yeah, no, that is a very intense game. I happened to see it at Fan Expo. A friend of mine, Nicholas Walker, he showed me the game, and I agree with you. It is intense. It's different than any game I have in my collection. But Dylan, what have you been playing this week?
It's actually, my son's been driving this one, and I picked up the little old pocket edition of Ogre from eons and eons ago. Seriously,
Nice.
$2.95 at the local game store, and pulled it out. He started punching chits, and he's like, "There's infantry, there's tanks, there's hovercrafts. It's like, we had to play this," and it's like chip off the old block. I remember playing war games with my dear old dad, and it's wonderful to see like your son kind of picking up on this just absolute Ameritrash stuff that just I lived for when I was a little kid. So my little 8-year-old, chip off the old block. Gotta love it.
That's awesome. Well, for myself, I actually didn't get a lot of gameplay in. I've been a little sick. That's why I'm drinking some tea right now. But I went on a guy's trip to see Oprah. Isn't that awesome?
It's a little bit of an oxymoron. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we were the only 5 guys in a row, so I was playing a lot of try to spot things in the crowd, like 5s in a row. But I could not find another 5 in a row of guys. But we did manage to play some games in the hotel, so probably my favorite one that we played was Great Heartland Hauling Company. Just because we were talking about micro games and just the small footprint they have, so we were able to play that in restaurants and in the hotel room, and so that was a ton of fun. So that was my week, and now I'm trying to recover from being sick. But enough of us. Let's jump to these amazing guests that we have and pick their brains about games. So first off, we already introduced them, but let's put them right back on the hot seat. Tell us a little bit more about your connection to games. You're designers, but what else? Are you gamers? Do you work for game companies? Anything like that? Jeremiah, why don't you go first? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, I've been a gamer since I was a kid. I mean, it was board games that I found in my family's closet, and then Dungeons and Dragons that I found in my cousin's drawer when I went to visit him that really got me into gaming. And I played a lot, and then didn't play for a while. Played only Diplomacy for like 10 years, and then after that I found Wolfgang Kramer's Detroit Cleveland Grand Prix, and found that. Did a Google search for that. Found Board Game Geek in late November of 2007. Found the print and plays right then because I was a solo gamer. I didn't have a group of friends. Found Print and Play, found Pocket Civ, and designed Zombie in My Pocket in late November of 2007. Put it up in December of 2007. So like a month into my getting into board games, really, and then that kind of took off a lot. People really enjoyed it. I didn't even know that zombie games were a thing.
Well, now you know.
Now you really know.
Wow.
I think that, I mean, I might have done something different, but I had just watched all the like Night of the Living Dead, the Romero films, and I was
Right.
like,
The good ones.
I could totally do a zombie game with this idea. and then I became the zombie guy. So then I got involved. I did marketing for. I did convention marketing and marketing for Cambridge Games Factory because they published my game and wanted me to go to shows to promote it. So I did that. They liked it, so I started doing marketing for them and run their shows. Then I got a better offer from elsewhere, and I switched to working for Indie Boards and Cards, and I am the convention manager for them, doing lots of demos of Resistance and Coup and Dragon Slayer and the fantastic games in their line. So I run their conventions and I get volunteered for that, and I love. It's fantastic. I also design games. I'm not very prolific, and I find that if a game isn't easy, I don't want to do it. So I start out with a lot of like interesting ideas that die.
Yep.
Maybe I hand them off to other people. But the games that I design tend to be games where the system is really simple and the people either bring the complexity or the interest. And that's just, it makes sense because I love people, and that's why I'm the convention manager for a board game company too, because I like people and I want to talk to people and I want to interact with them. So I make games that are very much about the people, and I always try to also add a little bit of diplomacy, the game diplomacy. It was very much a decision with the published version of Zombie in My Pocket. I wanted that feeling of like, are you going to support me into Munich, or are you going to backstab me?
Nice.
I gotta say, diplomacy, it really strikes a chord with me. Many may know I've got a background in, like, my master's degree is in military strategy, and actually both of the undergrad and postgrad military strategy courses that I was doing, we actually played diplomacy as our final project. So it's a huge thing, but getting into that, I was really interested in your comment about how you kind of just made this game and it exploded for you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of gamers look at PNP as kind of a subculture within a subculture, and you just kind of you tap right into there, and somehow you hit a chord. Like, how was that for you?
It literally changed my life, which is crazy because I printed this. I didn't even know like that I could go and buy cardstock. I cut up a Trader Joe's Raisin Bran box and fed it through my printer to make my cards for the first time.
That's awesome.
I had really no idea, and I don't know. It's the fact that it's been downloaded over 70,000 times or something like that, and it has more ratings on BGG than many published games. It just like so much of its success, and this is what we can say now. It was designed in 2007, so November of 2007, November of this year, it'll be 7 years old.
Wow.
Crazy.
So on the note of Zombie in My Pocket, then came Airborne in My Pocket. Emmanuel, why don't you tell us a little bit about how that started and a little bit of your designer story?
Well, I come from a very different place than Jeremiah. I grew up with games, but as an only child, I never had anybody to play with. So games happened in my head mostly. And then around when I was a teenager, I discovered Dungeons and Dragons. So role-playing games were the way to go for me. I had a few friends, and I spent my whole teenage years, maybe 10 or 15 years playing role-playing games, a lot of them. And then I veered off to writing novels and writing for TV. So games were put on the back burner. My girlfriend at the time didn't want to play, so I just let games slip away and entered my middle ages. And my renaissance came when I discovered, well, I played a bit of, I played some board games, sometimes Catan when it came out and stuff. But when I saw Jeremiah Lee's Zombie in My Pocket on BGG, that's when I discovered the concept of print and play, and discovered that, you know, for a few bucks, just could have a very nice looking game, which was really fun, and as a big bonus, it played solo. So for me, it was a revelation to have board games that you could play solo. So, and then, well, Jeremiah was watching Romero movies, but I just watched Band of Brothers. So when I played Zombie in My Pocket, so I said, hey, you know, we need something warlike. So I designed Airborne in My Pocket and printed it. Just, you know, I was just happy to put it there. I didn't expect any reaction to it, and somehow all my creative energies were focused on that little thing. So it was like a print and play that got, you know, way too big, and then I decided to create a second print and play, which would be the contrary, which would all fit on a single page, which was D-Day Dice. So you just print this one black and white page, and you have, you know, put on some dice, and you're ready to go. So then I went to D-Day Dice, and that was a big success too. It got published. We sold many copies and stuff. So that's where I come from. And the problem with me is that I have a job that takes a lot of my time, so I don't have enough time, not as much time as I would like to spend on game designing. So it's just sometimes I will spend 3 months designing madly something and then not look at game design for a year or two. It's not a full-time thing for me.
So Emmanuel, where are you actually located now?
I'm in front of my computer right now in Mont-Saint-Hilaire.
Oh, okay.
Mont-Saint-Hilaire is in Quebec, near Montreal.
Right. So tell us about your connection to like the rest of us, except for Jeremiah. The rest of us are members of the Game Artisans of Canada, and we don't see you as much as we'd like to anymore. Tell us your relationship to us.
Well, I'm kind of a guest star in your group because I don't do anything. I'm just like the mascot. You know, I'm the French-speaking guy. So I like I like the fact that there's this Canadian group. I just love the fact that you guys published a lot of games, and I really, you know, I don't know. I like the idea of being part of a community, but it takes a lot of time, and I don't have the time in my life with, and also I have a sick girlfriend to take care of, so I don't have the time I'd like to have to spend on your forums and discussing things or just playing games. I play like 10 different games a year, maybe.
Oh, well, that's horrible.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
All right, well, kind of bridging the gap then, what do you see are some of the similarities between the Game Artisans, what they're trying to do, and the print and play community? What would you say, Emmanuel first, and then we'll go to Jeremiah, who not necessarily has Game Artisan experience, but we want to hear about the print and play community. So Emmanuel, why don't you start with what are the similarities, and then Jeremiah afterwards, if you could just talk a little bit about the print and play community.
Well, the print and play community is basically people. It's more feedback from players. Well, in the Game Artisans, you have feedback from other game designers, where we all encourage ourselves, and we're all in the same boat. Whereas in the print and play community, it's mostly the designer talking to the players and taking feedback, answering questions and stuff. So I don't see them similar at all.
Right. So Jeremiah, why don't you explain a little bit for anyone who doesn't know the print and play community? Maybe explain what it is and how it works.
Okay, so like total basic level, print and play games is a designer, often somebody that hasn't had something published, but I don't know, more frequently now it's people that have had things published and people that are publishing things through something else and offering it as print and play. When I got started, it was basically like just some guys that wanted to get games out there however they thought was possible. And so we would post something, and people would download it. So you can download the games. Usually, I mean, the way that I'm connected to is through Board Game Geek. I'm sure that there are other places that do print and play games, but I found a home in Board Game Geek, and I haven't needed it elsewhere. So you go to Board Game Geek, you follow lists about print and play games, you download the files, you print them off, and you play them. Often there will be a like black and white low ink file of a game so that you can test it, because you never know before you're making it if it's going to be worth like making the really fancy version that takes a lot of ink and a lot of money. And then if you do, you're like, oh, well, that was not fun at all, and I spent so much time, and it looks really pretty, and I hope someone will take it from me.
You can always re-gift it.
Yes, that's true. And I mean, there's not the gateway to get through as a print and play. You just put it up on Board Game Geek and say, hey, this is a game, and play it. So there's a lot of stuff out there that's not as good. It's not ready for publication. But there are great games that just either the person didn't know how to get it published through a traditional publisher, or they didn't want to. I mean, Pocket Civ is one of them. It's a great game. It's solo. It's super easy. The basic version you can play with a piece of paper and 9 cards, and it's amazing. It's super fun. I have printed out the deluxe version. I played it once, and I said why would I ever want anything more than the basic? Because it gives me exactly what I need. So there's a lot, and this community of people, it's really collaborative, and it's really, I don't know, I mean, it feels big to me now. When I first started, when I put Zombie in My Pocket out there, I think part of the reason that it hit so big is just it wasn't as saturated.
Right.
But it has changed a lot over the years, though.
Yeah.
Because when I started, when I noticed, when I first saw Zombie in My Pocket, it was mainly people publishing games just because they wanted to share them. Now that a couple of print and play games have been published, like Zombie, like D-Day Dice, and were successes, I noticed that people tend to consider print and play as like demos. For publishers and stuff that they can kickstart later on, but it's not the same feeling of just people sharing for nothing. I do feel something underneath. There's people. There's hope. There's the hope of being the one, the next one.
That's an absolutely brilliant point, I mean, that makes immense sense, because the big successes of 2011, 2012, if I'm getting my dates right, I mean, it was the print and plays. The Kickstarter successes were the print and plays. But let's kind of go back. Let's go back to the PNP kind of ethos. Let's go back to the heyday, before it was cool, and I wanted to go back to Pocket Civ because Scott Slomany is, and I mentioned him in the teaser. I've kind of online been discussing with him since 2006, from the days of BGDF, the Board Game Designer Forum. We used to have weekly or monthly game design challenges and stuff like that. He came up with the most outrageously interesting ideas. But yeah, Pocket Civ was the print and play that I most remember playing. And so I kind of wanted to come back to, like, this concept of the culture of print and play and the shift to what it may be now. Let's talk about what it was before. Let's talk about how you saw print and play being back in the day before Kickstarter.
Yeah, I think.
Why did you put your game up there?
I put mine there because I had no sense. No, I mean, it never even occurred to me to try to get it published. I mean, I was so new to board games other than Diplomacy, and I guess I'd played Settlers quite a bit, like 500 times, quite a bit. Like we had that game in my flat, and we also had, and then I played Diplomacy. So I played Diplomacy. I'm a Diplomacy player, and we also do this thing with the people that don't play Diplomacy. But I had it never even occurred to me. I just wasn't, I don't know, I'd never heard of anyone doing that. I hadn't gone to any conventions, so I hadn't seen prototypes. I wasn't involved in gaming to know, hey, this is a viable option. And I was inspired by Pocket Civ, and I was inspired by, man, what were the early things? I don't remember if there was anything print and play before that really struck me. But I mean, Pocket Civ was free, and I was like, I can do that, and it'll work. I mean, I didn't think it'd work. I was like, I can do that, and it'd be fun. And so I did.
I actually thought that if you had a print play game, it would be impossible to get published. I actually thought that the fact that you were a print and play actually reduced your chances of being published to zero.
I think that's a big myth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we know, but we didn't know
now
at the time.
Know, yes.
I think at the time that made sense. I mean, there was it didn't happen. And people could already make your game. Like, why would people pay $30 to $50 for your game that they can make? We've since realized people don't want to make games if they can just pay $30 to $50 to get it. Because it's a lot of work. I mean, some people, like, my gosh, some people really, really put in a lot of effort on these things that I almost never do. The only time I really make a game fancy is if I'm giving it to someone else who's in the print and play community, because I know that they probably expect it nicer, because they probably build it nicer. But yeah, since then, since we've moved to this. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the heyday. It was awesome. It felt like a very inclusive society. I really felt connected, and partly because I'm a social guy, and my game got really popular, so people wanted to talk to me. So I mean, yeah, it was inclusive. Did it feel inclusive to the people who were kind of a part of it and were just players, just players? Did it feel inclusive to them? I don't know. I mean, I hope so. I still have friends who I see at conventions and who I talk to. Like, if they they happen to buy a game that I'm selling on the Board Game Geek Marketplace, and I recognize their name from print and play, I'm like, oh, I'm not selling it to you for that much. Like, you're a friend. I'll mark it down for that. And that just happened like 4 days ago. I mean, a guy that played Zombie in My Pocket like right at the start. I was like, I'm not gonna sell it to you for this. So yeah, I mean, it's still very much a family. And unfortunately, I'm mostly out of it now. I mean, I still look at print and play games. I still want to make them, and I mean, I still want to like craft them. And I'm always thinking about like, oh, would this game work for print and play? And most of the games that make it to a playable point of my designs, I still put out print and play, but nothing has even a 1/100th, 1% of the eyeballs that got put on Zombie in My Pocket.
I think it has to do with the zombies.
Zombies, I mean, the biggest
I'm gonna seriously agree with that, man.
But it's like the start of any relationship. It's always, there's the honeymoon at the start, and then, things change. Why
Yeah.
can't I can't see my face? Why am I the only one where I can't see my own face on my screen?
I think that's just the way it works.
If you just
Okay.
click it, you can see.
It's okay. Don't want to feel like left out.
You're good. You're good.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I'm from Quebec. We have like our own, we have complexes. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that I don't know if the PNP community will ever be as family-like as it used to be. I think it has grown bigger. I mean, BGG is not the same place as it was like 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're gonna relive those years. I think now the gaming industry is becoming bigger and bigger. There's more money involved. In the forums, there's a lot of more mean people in the forums. You used to have like a free pass if you were a designer, and now you have people complaining. I receive angry emails sometimes from players. So things have changed. I think where you have money, you have mean spirits.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to ask a quick question. So Jeremiah, when you first released Zombies in My Pocket, or Zombie in My Pocket, sorry, I think it was released under the Creative Commons license, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that for people who might not know what the CC is and how new designers might use that to their favor?
Right. I think when I don't know. I don't recall if when I very first did it, if I even knew about Creative Commons.
Right.
I pretty quickly switched to including that because once I saw how popular it was, I didn't right away think, oh, I should totally make money off this, because I didn't really see how. But I did see other people that were starting to post it in places that, while I didn't really specifically not want them to, I wanted to be, I wanted to know how much it was being downloaded. So I wanted to be able to track it, and Board Game Geek did that. And I wanted to have a connection to the people that were seeing it, and Board Game Geek did that. So I didn't want it posted all over on different share sites or whatever. And what was the first? Because there's like 27 different variants of it now. Like there's Fairy Tale in My Pocket, there's Dungeon in My Pocket,
Predator in My Pocket, Santa in My Home.
There's so many. I played the first few, and then I just couldn't keep up. And then Emmanuel was like, let me just write like the biggest in your pocket game ever, like 27-page rule books, and then the scenario book. Wow.
That's great. That's great. So actually, Dylan, I believe you have a question from one of our viewers.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, TC Petty the third, not just the first TC Petty, the third.
Yeah.
The man. Anyway, he's asking very intelligently. We got two guys who designed solo PNP games. Is solo like a requirement? Like, what is it that made people choose solo here? We'll go to Jeremiah because you're on the screen, and then we'll actually go over to Emmanuel.
I think solo was a big thing for a lot of us when we were, in that like 2008 time. I don't know, it just seemed, well, okay, so one big thing is you can play it right after you're done building it, which is good. Like, everybody likes that. And I think a lot of us were designers that really didn't have many, like Emmanuel, like me. Like, we didn't have a gaming group, so we designed games to be played by ourselves. And, like, I'd always been playing games by myself, but they were two-sided games. I'd play war games, and I'd be both sides. And then, It worked. It worked for a lot of us. Is it a requirement? Absolutely not. And you know that, TC.
Guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a good way to make the game, to give the game another boost in the people that are going to be printing and playing it. So if you can do like 1 to 8, 1 to 8's crazy, but like 1 to 5 is great. Like that's fantastic. I'll play it and then I can teach it to my buddies. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, TC, we understand. This is a philosophical question. You know the answer to this. We're going to go to Emmanuel and we're going to get his take. Okay? Emmanuel, over to you.
Well, I will add that. Well, I agree with what Jeremiah said, but I mean, I will add that when you design a game and you have no idea what you're doing, which was my case, making a game that's playable solo is the only way that you can playtest your game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have the full experience of the game by playing it yourself, playtesting it yourself. You don't have to take into account player interactions and stuff that you have no control over. So if you don't have access to a gaming group, designing a game that's playable solo is the only way to go, basically. And then you hope that it scales well. But to me, the focus was always the solo game because of that, because I had nobody else to play with anyway.
Excellent. Well, and you guys were mentioning before that there's so many different variants. I'm going to come back to Jeremiah, and as we do, Sen's going to pull up one of the many variants, the Santa Claus at my home. One of so many variants. What was it like to have your game be reimagined by a variety of people? What were some of the funny variants that you just never would have imagined that you thought were great? Tell us a little bit about that. Your game out there, but then people kind of bouncing it back with like this new variant.
Well, it was really surprising. I mean, certainly surprising at first when they first started happening. But then it quickly became clear that it was such a perfect system for that, because you could put just about any theme on it that you wanted, and not saying that like the theme didn't matter, because the theme entirely mattered. Like if this was, I mean, if it was an abstract, it would be totally worthless.
Right.
There's almost no fun in that. I mean, really the solo print and play game, while enjoyable, it's pretty, I don't know, it's a narrative experience. It creates this little story that you play through in 10 minutes, and then you're done. And you are making decisions. How important those decisions are, not really once you get the hang of how to make those decisions. I mean, what tends to be the best. But it just worked so wonderfully that so often it'd be like, now I'm down to that final step, and if I flip the right thing, or should I do this? And it worked out. So when people started making variants of it and rethemes and the Star Wars in your pocket, and then the not to be mentioned.
I know what you're going to mention. I know exactly what you're going to mention.
Like,
the initials are SM, and don't say it on our show. Don't.
The totally never ever happened space.
Oh, I'm going to mute you.
My pocket.
Just a second. There's someone I assume to be a lawyer at my door. Just a moment.
We could not get that game anywhere because it never happened. That whole thing was just that was super fun. And I mean, I designed a princess in my pocket, which was Pimp.
Very nice. I like the acronym.
And I had somebody do some artwork for it, and the artwork never came through. But so it exists still in my, I don't know. And at that point, I was riding on the wave of like Zombie in My Pocket popularity, so I didn't need to I didn't feel the need to push the Pimp What else? I remember Santa Claus in my home, and I remember reading through the rules and not fully comprehending what was going on. And maybe it's been updated since I read it, and I'm sorry if I offend, but I didn't understand that game at all.
That's fair. That's fair. We just thought it was a funny image, and so we thought we got to pull that up. But you already were talking about people making games. One of the main things we found from people is people watching often say, I'm just starting out, or I'm getting involved with designing games. How do I make prototypes? How do I do all that? Sam, why don't you get us talking about the nitty-gritty of prototyping?
Oh, okay. So I actually wanted to show this to Emmanuel specifically. Emmanuel, can you see this?
Yeah.
You can see I've made a little thing that tracks like 4 or 5 little things. I did it with this machine called the Crocodile.
Oh, that's cool.
And I did it because, because of D-Day dice, right? And I was thinking, if D-Day dice was a print and play, how would I make that tracking thing that he has in there? And so I figured it out. The Crocodile uses these grommets that you can get here, and it has a bunch of little heads in here. I don't know if everybody can see this, but you can set the hole size. So right there's a big hole, there's a little hole, and then this one punches a pin down, boop, and makes a grommet in the material. It'll go through leather, it'll go through plastic, it'll go through paper and cardboard, and then you have these really nice wheels that are attached on the other side. So instead of those brads that you see with folding on them, you get this kind of cool thing. So when you guys are print and playing, and when other people are print and playing, what do you use tool-wise? Is it the same? Is there anything special that you would recommend people get?
I use crappy components. I do the worst prototypings ever. It's crayon on pieces of cardboard that are not even the same size. So,
yeah,
sorry.
Absolutely. All my prototypes, all my print and play, but I mean definitely all my prototypes, they are pencil on paper, they are Excel spreadsheets that I cut out. It really, I mean, the Crocodile looks awesome.
Yeah.
It is.
But like I don't know.
It seems pointless.
I use child labor. Like,
oh, well, there you go.
My
There you go. There you go.
cards, and I put them in sleeves, and I draw on maps. Super, super, super low tech, because I don't care what it looks like. Don't care at all. If a game is good, and I'm playing it, and I'm tracking stats with 6 dice, I'm tracking stats with 6 dice, and then when I get to the publisher stage, if I get to the publisher stage, then they make it pretty.
Excellent. I think I would imagine many of our viewers are probably encouraged to hear that
you don't need a Crocodile.
You don't need a Crocodile, but Sen has one, and if you want to use his, you can go bug him and make fancy-looking prototypes.
Before you pass it, I just want to show this is a picture of Emmanuel's tiles.
Yeah. So there's
side by
nothing to
side.
add.
There you go, right there. All you can see my pointer there moving over this hand-drawn tank, and then later he brings it all to like this semi-realistic looking thing over here. So
that's a pretty nice drawn tank, actually. I don't know if I have those coloring skills myself.
And there you see some highlighter, maybe, I don't know, some.
Well, I changed ideas. I throw out names. I changed a lot of stuff. That's why I do crappy prototypes, so I don't feel bad wanting to change stuff.
Perfect.
For sure. I know Dylan's feeling a little sad over there. Why are you feeling sad, Dylan?
I do. Every time Sen brings up that little device, I just feel a little bit less manly. It's like that tool that I just don't have. It's my problem is I love beautiful prototypes. I just love them, and so like I try to hammer these things out of chisel them out of granite, and yet deep inside me, I realize you got to be able to change it up, and you got to be able to actually, do these things fast and work them over quickly. But I just can't. I can't. And so and this actually brings up a question that Seth Jaffe had asked. And a lot of this has already been answered. But basically, when you're making art for this stuff, Is it just for the game? Are you looking to publication? And I think that again we've kind of covered this in the whole cultural difference discussion. But what about what are your motivations for the art on these games, and what are your motivations for art now that you've had this experience? We'll go to Emmanuel first.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, when you were making prototypes before, you were saying you just scribble on a piece of paper, but
I still do.
Has that changed? You still do? Okay.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely do. It's just that when we go, because I do the graphics on my games, so when we get to that step, now it becomes important, but it's not important before. It's the same way when you write a script. You see, you have structure and then you have dialogue. And the dialogue just comes after. So I have to have a solid structure before putting in a single line of dialogue, and that's the same for the graphics. It's the same. As long as I have a functionality, I absolutely can live without beauty. And
I love that.
And then when the game, if the game is going to get published, then the whole thing changes, and my main concern becomes beauty.
I'm going to actually just pause before going over to Jeremiah because I want to follow up on that. I know you're a screenwriter. Like, I want to see how this other creative experience for you goes into your games. I mean, this is extremely important.
Well, it's storytelling. It's basic stuff that if you were a game master, if you're a dungeon master, when you play role-playing games, you know about this. You have to tell a story. It has to be exciting. So all this, when I design board games, I mean the ones that are published and the ones that I still have on my shelves, my main concern when I design them is that will there be structure in it? Will there be a beginning, a middle, and an end? Will you know just by looking at the board that you are closing in, that the end is coming? Will it feel like a climax? Basically, will it start slowly and end in a climax? I don't like games that just end arbitrarily just because it's the 5th turn. That's it. So I want to, and it's the same concerns you have when you write a story. You need to have all this climaxing stuff. You need to have this structure, that these curves that go up and up and up. Tension is up, drama is up. And that's it. And also, I need to know what story the game will tell. That's why I went to D-Day, because that's a great story. So I know what I'm telling. The game is molded to fit the ideas, to fit the story, and not the other way around. I start with the story, and then I try to find game mechanisms that will fit the story.
That's great. I look at it very similarly from a comic book writing point. In comic books, we talk about writing that the art is secondary to telling the story. That if you can't tell a good story, it doesn't matter how good the art is, it's not a good comic book.
Exactly.
And so I totally buy into what you're saying. And I think, Jeremiah, we were talking before the show started about role-playing games, because a lot of us come from that kind of 70s, early 80s, red box D&D. Can you tell us how storytelling has affected how you make games, Jeremiah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, storytelling is I don't know, it's so important, especially like now. I started when I was first getting back into games. I didn't know what was out there. And I was playing some Euro games that were not thrilling to me, but were interesting exercises with other people. And then I found some more Ameritrash that had a more narrative feel. And then I found some games that were more narrative based. And now I've found storytelling games like Microscope and like Kingdom and View Scream. And those are games where you're telling a story. And, I mean, so much of it is like, it's not even really a game. Like, Microscope is a way to collaboratively build a story. It has some rules. There's no winner. You're not competing in any way. and it's fantastic. And I love telling stories. And so part of what I like to do, and Dread. Dread is, it's just, if you like tension and horror, and I do, like, with Zombie in My Pocket, I mean, I like these themes, and I've played as many of the, in quotes, horror games as I could find in board games, and never, like, it's so hard to take game players and say, okay, you're going to be scared, this is scary, and actually get me to feel anything. Like, I play, what's that flying frog, in the Touch
of Evil?
Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm not feeling anything at all.
Well, there are other emotions than you mean they can. I want them to care. I don't necessarily need them to be scared.
Yes. Yeah.
But A Touch of Evil is actually a game I like because it's mostly narrative. I mean, the game mechanics are crappy.
They're just...
They're awful. All Flying Frog games are awful, but sometimes they work for me anyways because I play them solo and they really kind of tell a story. That's their main and only quality, actually. They really tell stories.
They definitely, I mean, that's what I was hoping for, but I never got that feeling. I think it was just too broken up with the Flying Frog system, where it's like random event.
Yeah, totally.
Thing and then random event, and it's the kind of the same feeling that I got in my too fast playthrough of Arkham Horror. Like, it's like
100%.
Like, what's going on? This isn't story. This is like random shit, random other shit, random other past 10 p.m.
Yeah. And 7 hours of it, right?
Yeah. Well, this was. I don't know. It was a long time, and I would like to play it again because I hear that it's really good. Man, I just missed a game. So anyway, so storytelling. Yes, love games. Want games that give you that sense of here we are. Here's the start. Here's the middle. Here's the end. And at the end, everyone's talking about what just happened. Like in the Resistance, one of my favorite parts of the game is just after the final mission, where you start the arguing phase.
Yeah, the debrief, man.
I gotta say, like, this is, and I've said this a few times, like, not in public, but not online, but any game that you can come away with explaining it as a story that happened to you.
Yeah,
it's a good 100%. Game. Yeah. You are, like, exactly what you're talking about now is exactly, I don't feel a game that's like, I was frustrated because I couldn't move this cube to this area. Yeah. I feel the game where you can tell it as a story. It's like, talking about my son playing ogre. It's like, my ogre went across this area and was able, it's totally different. So, like, how much does that experiential aspect play into your entire idea of game design?
When I'm either designing, I'm designing in two different ways. If I'm designing in one way, it's my make people interact in ways that are either uncomfortable because I like that, or interesting ways of people interacting. So that's my social designs, like things like Stab a Panda. If you haven't seen that, stabapanda.com. It's a terrible, terrible thing, and you should probably not even look at it. And it makes me a little nervous talking about it. But I have played this game with my mother-in-law, and she had to take notes on some of the terms that were used, but it was really fun. And so I do that, but also then I design, like, in the other way that I design is the making a story game, and I want people to step away and say, man, it was cool when this happened and this happened, and I want people to, like, stand up and be like, yeah, this thing that just happened is really cool. And nobody ever cheers in Le Havre.
I definitely don't.
However you pronounce that dreadful thing that Troyes. Then I
Wow.
sat through
Troy, actually.
Troy. Okay.
Troy.
Sat through 3 depressing hours of my life.
So,
And my buddy who owned the game and was super excited about it, he just traded it right after that because he knew he was never going to get it to the table again.
so that actually transitions to my question, because you're talking about who you play games with and thinking about that interaction. I'll go straight to Emmanuel, though, but like, who do you play with? Who are you thinking of when you're designing games?
Well, in reality, I play with my girlfriend, so I need to have games that are playable with two, or I play by myself. But I do think of the guy I used to be when I had a gaming group when I was in my 20s. So, you know, this is the guy I design games for this guy, the guy I used to be.
Gotcha. And Jeremiah, like, do you have a play group, like a gaming group that you get to see, or are you playing games with your family?
I did for like 3.5-ish years of my life. It was the most glorious thing ever. I had every Friday we would play games.
Yeah.
And the same people, and they were amazing, and they were my brothers. And one moved to Tuscaloosa, where apparently no gaming happens ever.
What happens in Tuscaloosa?
It's the work of the devil, I tell you.
I told him, look on BGG, you can find users by zip code. He said, I did that. It's me.
Wow.
So,
So probably on that note, actually, because I know Sen wants to talk a little bit about Vassal. We're talking about isolation. Sen, why don't you talk about Vassal?
So I was just wondering, how do you guys use Vassal when you're playtesting, when you're playing, in order to get your ideas out to other people before it hits a print and play file? Here's a picture of, I believe this is Airborne.
Yeah, it is.
So tell me who made this for you? Did you make it yourself?
There's
How does it work?
Yeah, there's just a guy who wrote me and said, "Hey, I would love to do a Vassal game, a Vassal module with your game." I had no idea what Vassal was, so I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So when I saw the end result, I thought it was interesting, but it was too much of a hassle just to have to move everything. I mean, to me, it's like it's the video game with all the disadvantages of a board game. It's like the worst of both worlds.
Oh, interesting.
But I understand the interest. I don't want I respect the thing. It's totally not for me. I can live with video games and board games, but this little bastard child is not for me.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, Vassal is actually an online system where somebody makes a module that you can move the parts around to play the game. And Jeremiah, can you tell me what this is? I just found it on BGG, and it's intriguing. What is it?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about my Vassal. I don't use it. I have used it to play games, but I never used it in my prototyping. I hear of people that have used it and used it really well. So definitely, don't take our opinion as the only one. Like, check it out. It's totally worthwhile. But I agree, it's kind of like a video game with all the badness of board games thrown into it. So this thing that you found, this screenshot, back, I don't know, in 2010-ish, my buddy and I, we made a Zombie in My Pocket iPhone app.
There it is again.
Actually, is this it? Is this the iPhone app, or is this the...
It's the right dimensions.
I think it was the iPhone app.
There's two things. So there's My Wife Rocks Productions did a phone app that wasn't necessarily iPhone.
That's a dangerous name for a company.
Yeah.
It is.
And then my buddy and I made Zombie in My Pocket for the iPhone, and it worked pretty well. And we sold some, but it turned out that it was never enough income to keep it going, and so when
Oh, okay.
switched, we didn't update it. There's actually been, over the years, I've had probably 50 different developers say, "Oh, I'd like to do something with Zombie in My Pocket for this system or this system," and I always I talk to them and I tell them my experience with it, and I say, "Yes, you can do that. You have to give me some money, and not much. It's not like you have to give me $500 right now. No, it's this is my experience, and if you want to do it, that's great. If you're selling it, give me some money. If you're not selling it, that's awesome. Just leave my name in there." And I don't think anybody's ever got past the "I'm checking it out" phase. So.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I'm just noticing actually the time, and we are coming up to midnight here, so we need to wrap up. But I want to give each of our guests just kind of a final chance to share some advice for our viewers. So, Emmanuel, I'm wondering, for anyone out there that's a first-time designer, what tips would you give them as they're starting? What words of advice would you give?
Well, just don't be scared to try something different. It's the only thing I would have to say to any people starting any creative endeavor. Just do what you think will work, and it probably will be crap, and that's okay too. Your life doesn't depend on it. It's okay to make mistakes. That's basically it.
So we'll pass over to Jeremiah. What are your recommendations for people looking into getting either print and play games into the market or getting into the market itself?
To kind of add on to what he just said, there's a saying in Go, the ancient game, that you're supposed to lose your first 300 games very quickly, and that's kind of the way that I've gone in designing. Design your first 10 games really quickly so that you can learn how to do it. Don't expect that the first one is gonna be any good or get published. I mean, really, the fact that my first game got published is weird. My first game was super simple, and the published version, I had an amazing developer with Rob Cedar with Cambridge Games Factory. The man's just astounding. So without him, my first game wouldn't really have got published. So yeah, play. Design your first 10 games really quickly, and put them up. Put them up on print and play. There are lots of people there that will play. It's hard to get lots of people playing, but you will very likely get one or two people that could really be super, super helpful.
And be open to criticism.
Yeah. And also note that just because somebody comes on and says, "Hey, I want this like this," you don't have to do it. Just because a playtester says it doesn't mean it's the best idea. But definitely be open to it. Give it a try.
Well, it depends what you want to do. If you want to just make a game because you want to make a game, you can ignore criticism. If you want it to be published, then you have to listen to it.
Yeah, or even not just published, but if you want it to work as well as it can. Zombie in My Pocket actually very quickly, from November of 2007 to early 2008, it changed. And it changed for the better, vastly for the better. And it stayed that way since then. And that was entirely based upon people saying, "Here's a super simple thing that you missed that could make it play a lot easier." Because there was actually a combat resolution table in the very first Zombie in My Pocket, and that went away very quickly. It was just a single line chart, but it went away and it became subtracting instead of checking the chart. So users are helpful. Players are.
That's wonderful. Well, I want to thank both Jeremiah Lee and Emmanuel Aquin for being our guests for this episode. Also, on behalf of Sen, Dylan, and I, we just thank you for tuning in, watching the show. If you have more questions or suggestions for future shows, let us know at Meeple Syrup. You can find us online at meeplesyrupshow.com. Next week, we will be featuring two amazing guests. We will have Eric Lang and Gavin Brown. So we'll actually be an all-Canadian show. So we're going to be talking about, I was going to say Ameritrash games, but it should be Canadian trash games. And maybe we'll coin a new term there.
Canatrash.
Canatrash, yeah. And so we'll be talking about those kind of games, thematic, or according to Eric Lang, he said just fun games. So tune in for that. Also, we're going to try a new thing, and we're going to host our discussion of the hosts in a couple days, so stay tuned, and you can find our video on our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that's just youtube.com/meeplesyrup, and you can find all our videos there. So thanks, and have a great night. Goodbye.